Good morning. In today's headlines, the suspect in the Maine shootings still at large. Police and FBI agents surrounded a home in Bowdoin last night, demanding surrender. The latest on the hunt for fugitive Robert Card.
The U.S. launching precision airstrikes in Syria this morning. That's in response to a rise in terrorist attacks on U.S. forces since the war in Israel began.
A heavy lift on day one of the job. Newly elected Speaker Mike Johnson met with President Biden to negotiate aid to Ukraine and Israel. How will the conservative speaker negotiate with Democrats?
We have recent presidential candidate poll results. Who's in the lead? What are the latest trends to watch out for? A polling analyst breaks it down.
Iran, its money, and support for terrorism. We delve into the ways the country sources its funds and uses them to prop up terror groups. A retired U.S. diplomat and special agent shares his insight.
Students at some universities in America are afraid to voice their opinions. We sat down with an expert to talk about the importance of free speech. Good morning. Welcome to NTD. I'm Kevin Hogan.
Good morning. I'm Evelyn Lee. Today is finally Friday, October 27th.
Yes, and everyone in that whole area of Maine, please be careful.
Right. We have some development on the intensive manhunt in Maine to find 40-year-old Robert Card. Card is accused of killing at least 18 people and injuring several others Wednesday night in two shootings in Lewiston. He is now facing an arrest warrant for 8 counts of murder and considered armed and dangerous.
Police say the counts will probably go up to a total of 18 after the remaining victims are identified. Authorities are asking residents to report any suspicious activity and to shelter in place.
The FBI and state police carried out a search warrant at Card's last known address last night. NTD's Jeremy Sandberg has more on the manhunt and reactions to it.
Heavily armed police surrounded a home in Bowdoin, Maine Thursday as FBI agents on a loudspeaker shouted, "Come out with your hands up." Dozens of law enforcement officials were drawn to the scene in the search for the U.S. Army reservist accused of killing 18 people and wounding 13 others in 2 shootings on Wednesday. Hundreds of agents, including FBI, have been hunting for the 40-year-old fugitive with a history of mental health issues. Neighbor Dave Latarte says he knows the family and was shocked someone could go off the deep end like that.
The good people, it was Robert that had the mental issues for a while.
Officials say those issues include hearing voices.
Right now our focus is on the victims, their families, and making sure that they have the mental health need and the physical needs in order to get through this.
One close friend of a victim says grief is still sinking in.
I put my phone down and I said, I'll get back to her. And obviously I can't now.
House Speaker Mike Johnson called the shooting a horrific tragedy and offered condolences on behalf of the House.
We're so grateful for law enforcement. We trust and hope and pray that they're able to apprehend this individual as quickly as possible. There's no more injury or loss of life. This is a dark time in America. We have a lot of problems.
Johnson says times like this call for prayer for evil and senseless violence to stop.
Everyone wants this to end, and I'll leave it there.
Senators' reactions were unsurprisingly mixed.
There are some fundamentals that we should all agree on. Serious background checks to keep guns out of the hands of people who shouldn't have them.
How did he stay in the Army Reserve? How did it not get up the chain of command that, this guy's got problems?
Senator Richard Blumenthal suggested a bipartisan gun violence prevention group.
But it will be difficult given the far-right extremist speaker who's just been chosen in the House.
Florida governor and presidential candidate Ron DeSantis pointed to mental health as the underlying issue.
I think red flag has been abused because people can just lodge a complaint. Sometimes they'll take somebody's firearms. And here's the thing. It's not even Second Amendment as much as just a Fifth Amendment due process issue. Can you take someone's property without having an adjudication? So I think it's different. I don't think it would have mattered in this case. I do think a commitment, an involuntary commitment, would have done the trick.
DeSantis says more involuntary institutionalization is needed and tougher penalties for gun crimes.
You talk to people in jail, sheriffs. A lot of the people that end up in the justice system have mental problems, and so we've not done a good job with that. Now, on the other side, on the crime, we're going to hold people accountable.
Authorities say Card is a certified firearms instructor and recently threatened to carry out a shooting at a National Guard facility in the state. Jeremy Sandberg, NTD News.
Newly elected House Speaker Mike Johnson is facing his first heavy lift, negotiating with the White House on aid to Ukraine and Israel.
Where does Johnson stand on this aid, and can he unite his party and work across the aisle? NTD's Melina Weiskup has more from Capitol Hill.
In his first day on the job as the newly elected speaker, Johnson met with President Biden along with other members on a bipartisan basis in Congress today, already feeling the pressure about having to deal with Israel aid and Ukraine aid. Now, the big issue here is that the White House had requested in their $106 billion request to combine both Israel and Ukraine aid. So number one issue is the fact that Johnson himself doesn't even support Ukraine aid. We saw that from his voting record, but also that members within the Republican Party, some of them are unwilling to pass the two simultaneously. Here's what members told us about combining these two pieces of legislation.
What's the president's view on how long we're going to be doing this? This funding will get us close to $200 billion. How are we going to pay for it?
That's fine. No problem. We have to help both. These are regional wars that we got to help. Otherwise, it can become a bigger conflict.
We have to stand shoulder to shoulder with Ukraine. There needs to be a level of scrutiny and an assertion that we have a common goal.
Israel aid is immediate. Ukraine received already a lot of funding. We need to take care of Israel, and we have American hostages. We have Americans who were killed.
So not only is Johnson having to work to unite his conference on this issue, but also he has to face the pressure of having to reach across the aisle and work with Democrats, especially being one of the most conservative members in Congress. And on this point of Israel, there are clearly huge disagreements within the House on Israel. We saw that when 9 Democrats refused to vote for a condemnation resolution to condemn the Hamas attacks on Israel. And now one of those anti-Israel members, Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib, is facing the possibility of being censured over her past comments on Israel. That resolution was introduced by Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene. She accuses Tlaib of sympathizing with the Hamas terrorist group, and she also accuses her of inciting an insurrection in the Capitol when there was a ceasefire protest here, both inside and outside the halls of Congress, with hundreds of people. Tlaib was not inside speaking to protesters, but she was outside. Here's what Greene had to say when she introduced this censure resolution, along with one Democrat Jewish congresswoman in her opposition to it.
A resolution censuring Representative Rashida Tlaib for anti-Semitic activity, sympathizing with terrorist organizations, and leading an insurrection at the United States Capitol complex. Whereas in May 2019, Rashida Tlaib said that she celebrated the Holocaust and felt a calming feeling when thinking about the genocide of millions of Jews.
Rich for her to be looking to censure Rashida Tlaib. Look, do I agree with everything Rashida says? No, but she's not inciting violence. And that is what the conversation was around Ms. Greene.
And we know of at least one Democrat congressman who says he's considering actually voting for this censure resolution. So it will be interesting to see how Democrats as a whole vote for it, if it does in fact come to the floor for a vote. But right now, that's up to Speaker Johnson whether or not he brings it up to the floor. We're told that it could happen sometime next week. Reporting from Capitol Hill, Melina Weiskup, NTD News.
Now we're going to examine what a Johnson win in the House Speaker race says about the makeup of the GOP conference. Here with us live to address this is Bart Marcois, a former presidential campaign policy advisor. Bart, it's great to have you with us this morning. Thanks for your time.
Good morning, Kevin. Thank you.
So Representative Matt Gaetz is holding up Speaker Johnson's win as a testament to MAGA power over the House of Representatives. Do you agree with this?
I do, but when I say that, I need to make a couple of statements. Matt Gaetz does not really speak for the base of the party. He is trying to position himself on the crest of this wave, and he is not the spokesman for it. Second, we need to define what we're talking about when we say MAGA Republicans. All that means, that's what Richard Nixon, when I was a child, called the silent majority. It just means the great mass of voters who are saying, hey, wait a minute, what's going on here? Why don't our leaders represent us anymore? It's normal people who want to return to normalcy and a return to just following the rules in the House and in the land.
Yeah, that silent majority has been coined the unsilent majority after many people spoke up to what they saw as just intolerable acts that were happening across the country. Now, are there any areas where Johnson needs to step up and take more of this MAGA initiative?
I think it just comes as second nature to him. He will do what the base of the party wants to have done, I believe. I think he will pursue with precision and equanimity an inquiry into whether or not impeachment is warranted against President Biden. I think he will return to what they call regular order in passing the budget. The Constitution says the House is supposed to pass a budget in the beginning of the congressional calendar, and for centuries the tradition was you pass individual budgets for individual departments. There are supposed to be 12 spending budgets, and for the last 27 years, Republicans and Democrats alike have been ignoring the rules and ignoring tradition, and have been just passing these big, massive spending bills where you can hide all kinds of spending. It's no wonder we have this massive deficit, because we're hiding all the spending and we're refusing to cut anything. I think he will cut spending, and he'll start doing it in a gradual way. And by the time he leaves tenure as House Speaker, we will have a more reasonable budget situation.
Speaker Johnson won unanimous support from Republicans, and he's an ardent conservative. So if MAGA power really is prevailing here, what do we expect to happen next?
Well, as I said, I think that he will pursue an impeachment inquiry, and I think that everybody who looks at it realizes that that will lead to impeachment of President Biden. Whether they can get a conviction in the Senate, a vote for removal, I'm not sure, but I think they can. I think the Democrats have decided that Biden is a liability. You look at the polls that you're citing this morning. He's underwater even in states like New York. He is not going to win. I don't think he's going to be the nominee, and I think that the House will initiate that process. I think you'll see a return to a discipline in spending. I think there will be less money appropriated for Ukraine in the future. You will see very strong support of Israel. You'll see the House, at least, make a strong commitment to protect America's southern borders and to tackle the rising crime and the flood of fentanyl, which is killing 100,000+ people every year in America. And nobody is really doing anything about it.
All very important issues. Bart Marcois, former presidential campaign policy advisor, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Kevin.
Coming up, the U.S. is launching precision airstrikes in Syria this morning. That's in response to a rise in terrorist attacks on U.S. forces since the war in Israel began.
President Biden has new competition in his bid for re-election. Minnesota Congressman Dean Phillips has thrown his hat into the ring.
An intruder who entered RFK Jr.'s property was arrested twice in one day after he returned to the scene. Find out what happened.
And an expert discusses the latest presidential poll results and trends. We'll break it all down for you after this short break.
The highest art is beautiful, breathtaking, timeless, and moving. Experience art with 5,000 years of history, inspired by the divine. Experience Shen Yun.
Is deep-sea fish oil really healthy? Due to pollution in the oceans, most fish contain heavy metal elements and radioactive substances. That's why it's so important to choose a pure source of omega-3. Puritan green vegetable omega-3 is made from purslane and perilla seeds, which are rich in nutrients and minerals, especially vitamins A, D, E, calcium, and iron. With natural processing and no harmful chemical additives, it has more than 90% concentration of omegas 3, 6, 7, and 9. It effectively improves brain power and is beneficial to the heart's health. Puretang Omega-3 does not smell of fish and contains no pollutants, so both adults and children can safely and easily consume it over a long period of time. Puretang Green Vegetable Omega-3. Greener, healthier, and more effective. Visit puretang.com to learn more.
I'm Jesus of Nazareth.
I'm going to tell everyone.
I was counting on it.
I must say, I am shocked.
This is different. Get used to different. What will be next? Any suggestions?
He gave us even more than we need.
Unbelievable.
What?
Do they know what the remarkable thing it is?
They could not believe their ears.
Not too shabby.
It was incredible. Your faith is beautiful.
Anyone who's ever sold a home will tell you it's really hard. And it's one of the biggest financial decisions you'll ever make. That's why who you work with matters. Together with HomeLight, we take care of every detail.
Thank you so much.
Fostering a pet for a friend or neighbor can keep families together. Learn more at petsandpeopletogether.org.
Good to have you back. The U.S. military carried out airstrikes in Syria near the border of Iraq today.
The Pentagon says the targets were being used by Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps and affiliated terrorist groups.
President Biden ordered the airstrikes. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin stated Iranian-backed attacks against U.S. forces are unacceptable and must stop.
A defense official says 2 F-16 fighter jets using precision munitions carried out the attack and that weapons and ammunition facilities were taken out.
A statement from the Pentagon said precision self-defense strikes are a response to recent attacks that spiked on October 17th. The U.S. is bolstering its presence in the Middle East as attacks on U.S. and coalition forces rise. The Pentagon says it's deploying roughly 900 American troops to protect U.S. forces and interests overseas.
The news coincides with the shipment of a terminal high-altitude area defense system and more Patriot missile batteries to the region.
The Pentagon says U.S. forces in Iraq and Syria were attacked 3 times yesterday. That brings the total within the last week up to 16 and 19 since the war in Israel began. 21 U.S. personnel reportedly sustained minor injuries.
Iran's foreign minister warned the UN yesterday if Israel does not stop its offensive, the U.S. will, in his words, not be spared from this fire.
We're going over to politics. A subpoena seeking information from former President Donald Trump's 2020 campaign has been withdrawn.
This is the second withdrawn subpoena related to Special Counsel Jack Smith's investigation into Trump's fundraising practices after the 2020 election.
Earlier this month, Smith reportedly withdrew a subpoena seeking records from Save America, a Trump-controlled political action committee.
The 2020 campaign's fundraising efforts also came under scrutiny from the House Select Committee investigating the January 6 Capitol breach. At a June 2022 hearing, the panel tried to make the case that the Trump campaign raised funds by falsely claiming the election was stolen. And we're still more than a year out from the 2024 presidential election. How is the race shaping up so far? Epoch Times reporter Janet Heisel spoke with a national pollster to find out. Take a look.
Richard Barris, the People's Pundit, as he is known on YouTube, is the director of the Big Data poll. He offers a look into what polls say about 2024 presidential candidates. Right now, he says former President Donald Trump is showing well in polls, despite his legal problems. And he's leading in some states where he never led before.
We've just never seen Donald Trump polling as well as he's polling now in the Rust Belt states, but also nationally. He's never surpassed 50 in a national poll, and that's true of both 2016 and 2020.
Barris says Trump appears to be gaining ground with two important groups of voters.
There's a couple of things. There are a couple of subgroups that I think are interesting, and one obviously is age, and the other is non-white vote shares that Trump has been, experiencing this increase in support in.
He also shares his thoughts on some current trends affecting poll results. One huge issue is how voters view the state of the economy.
And the economy is a big deal. Despite the at least initial reports that are typically revised every month when we get the jobs report or something like that, Americans aren't buying it. They know that real wage growth is not what it was, and they're not feeling very optimistic about the future. They're struggling. So that's obviously going to be a top issue. It's probably the number one issue right now.
Foreign policy looms large in the minds of voters as well.
President can't be saved by foreign policy, but he can be destroyed by his foreign policy record. And, the latest, what we're seeing now, it's a continuation of more of the same. Started in Afghanistan, and now Americans have the general sense that the world's in chaos.
Does Barris think age will play a role in voter choice?
I think age only becomes a factor when somebody starts to show their age. It really is about competency. And of course, we do connect it with age.
While this is a two-candidate race between Biden and Trump, RFK Jr. is also now a third-party candidate if he can get on the ballot. What are polls saying about his effect on the election?
We do have conflicting polls when it comes to RFK's impact, and ours we just released a little bit ago, a couple days ago, that showed that really it was very close, but RFK hurt Trump slightly more than he hurt Biden. If RFK's not on the ballot, they're otherwise inclined to vote for Donald Trump.
While polls are interesting, they also have a margin of error. And current polling shows neither major candidate has a commanding lead at this point in time.
Minnesota Congressman Dean Phillips announced he is challenging President Biden in the Democratic primary.
Earlier this year, he said he would not run against Biden, but would encourage others in their efforts.
Phillips told CBS News that he would not sit still when numbers are saying there will be an emergency next November. He also said that Biden has done a great job for the country, but the election is about the future.
Phillips has argued that Biden isn't a strong candidate because of his age and low approval rating.
His campaign launch comes as Democrats seek to unify around the president and lay out the administration's accomplishments to voters. Conservative talk show host Larry Elder announced on X that he's exiting the 2024 Republican presidential primary race.
Elder is endorsing former President Donald Trump in his bid for re-election.
Elder decided to suspend his campaign after careful consideration with his staff. He did not appear in the Republican debates because he couldn't meet donor and polling requirements mandated by the Republican National Committee.
In Elder's words, Trump's leadership has been instrumental in advancing conservative, America First principles and policies that have benefited our great nation.
In other news, a man was arrested twice on the same day for entering the property of Robert Kennedy Jr. The intruder was first arrested on suspicion of trespassing at around 9:30 a.m. Wednesday. He was issued an emergency protective order and released. He then returned to the property at around 5:45 p.m. This time, security detained him.
Police then arrested him for violating the emergency protective order. Kennedy is an independent presidential candidate. His campaign used the incident to again request Secret Service protection from the Department of Homeland Security. Kennedy has so far been denied protection.
And coming up, President Biden says he has no confidence in death toll numbers coming out of Gaza. Now National Security Council spokesman John Kirby is stepping up to the plate to explain the White House's stance.
And we zoom in on Iran's finances with an international security expert. How does the Iranian regime use its money to support terrorism? Let's find out.
A pair of lawmakers call for swift action from the DOJ in a case centered on possible Hamas financing through cryptocurrency.
Hi everyone watching at home. We're here to remind you that if you or someone you know were injured in an accident that was not your fault, listen up. We have live agents available right now to answer your questions and tell you how much your case is potentially worth. Hi, I'm Gina Bellich, here with spokesman and TV personality Tom Mustin with us in the Help Center. So Tom, phones are really busy over there. Tell us what kind of calls you're seeing.
Well, Gina, first off, thank you for having me here in the call center with you. We always enjoy talking to the viewers and getting folks the compensation that they deserve. You know, we're seeing calls about all kinds of accidents, but the most common by far has been car accidents. So if you or someone you know were injured in an accident that was not your fault, give us a call right now. You'll speak with a live person. They'll answer any questions you have and tell you if you have a case and how much your case is potentially worth.
Thanks, Tom. All right, folks at home, you heard it. Take advantage of this opportunity and call now.
Kindness is cool. Because we feel happier when we do good. Kindness connects us with others and improves our self-esteem. Simple actions, meaningful lives. Let's practice kindness, share our love, and show our care for one another. Submit videos of kindness to Gangjing World for prizes up to $10,000 in cash. For more information, visit gangjingworld.com.
Are you over the age of 50 and considering buying an annuity in the next 60 days? I have some important news for you. Don't buy an annuity until you understand the pros and cons of annuities. Call now for this free book on maximizing your income in retirement. Annuity Do's and Don'ts for Baby Boomers from leading financial firm J.D. Mellberg. That's right, free. This book reveals little-known truths about annuities in simple-to-understand terms. Grab a pen right now, because we're about to offer you this free book that unlocks the 5 little-known truths we believe baby boomers and seniors should know before buying an annuity, and it's free. Call 800-975-5560. As a bonus, we'll also throw in a free annuity rate report. We researched numerous products and summarized rates and benefits of annuities, all from Silac Insurance Company. Call 800-975-5560. That's 800-975-5560. Call now.
Good to have you back. And for the second night in a row, the IDF conducted what it called targeted raids inside Gaza.
The raids included aircraft and artillery strikes. The IDF says they targeted Hamas infrastructure. Those include anti-tank missile launch sites, military command and control centers, as well as Hamas terrorists. The IDF says that troops exited the area at the end of the activity.
The raid comes one day after a previous incursion by Israeli forces into Gaza on Thursday. NTD's Jason Perry has more on the Israel-Hamas war, but not before a warning. This report contains footage that some viewers may find disturbing.
On Thursday, Israeli forces said that in the past 24 hours, Israeli fighter jets had struck over 250 Hamas terror targets in the Gaza Strip. But how do these airstrikes look from further up? Satellite images released by Maxar Technology shows the before and after pictures of the Israeli airstrikes as of October 21st. Almost 3 weeks ago, on October 7th, Hamas terrorists went on a killing spree, murdering over 1,400 civilians in Israel, which started the war between Israel and Hamas. On Thursday, a first responder visited one of those ransacked communities and described what it was like when he arrived.
The room was, from the bottom, all the floor was full of blood. All the walls were full of blood. The ceiling, we are hours and hours and hours here scraping all the evidence and everything, whatever is left, to bring it to burial.
Based on new intelligence, Israel has now increased the number of hostages taken by Hamas to 224, with the possibility of more. Family members of the hostages held a press conference in Tel Aviv, but people were forced to evacuate due to the sound of sirens and explosions overhead. civilians are getting caught in the crossfire on both sides of the war. Mahmoud Shamia, along with his wife and 3 children, have been sheltering at a camp overseen by the United Nations Relief and Works Agency, also known as UNRWA.
They told us to get out of northern Gaza to protect our lives, and I actually left the place. But explosives are around us here everywhere. Where should we go?
On Wednesday evening, a spokesman for the Israeli military responded to UNRWA's claim that due to a fuel shortage, the United Nations mission in Gaza would be forced to stop if Israel did not stop the blockade on Gaza.
We responded to UNRWA's claim by referring them to where Hamas, which governs the Gaza Strip, stores fuel, both diesel fuel and other types of and benzene and other types of fuel. It's all inside the Gaza Strip, and there's enough for many days for hospitals and water pumps to run, only the priorities are different.
He went on to say that Hamas keeps the fuel for warfighting capabilities and leaves the citizens without it. Jason Perry, NTD News.
White House spokesperson John Kirby defended the U.S. stance on death tolls coming out of Gaza.
Kirby was asked why the State Department changed its approach when reporting numbers from the Gaza and Palestinian Ministry of Health. Watch.
We all obviously grieve with the families and loved ones who are affected by that, but the numbers are not reliable. They're just not reliable. And I don't need to tell you how to do your jobs, but if you're going to report casualty figures out of Gaza, I would frankly recommend you don't choose numbers put out by an organization that's run by a terrorist organization. What's harsh is the way Hamas is using people as human shields. What's harsh is taking a couple of hundred hostages and leaving families anxious, waiting and worrying to figure out where their loved ones are. What's harsh is dropping in on a music festival and slaughtering a bunch of young people just trying to enjoy an afternoon. I could go on and on. That's what's harsh.
Hamas and cryptocurrency are in the news. 2 lawmakers want the Department of Justice to finish its investigation of Binance and Tether and decide if they should face criminal charges.
The big question is whether these companies enabled financing for the Hamas terrorist attack in Israel.
The lawmakers are Senator Cynthia Loomis and Representative French Hill. They are asking the DOJ to carefully examine how much Binance and Tether might be helping terrorists by breaking laws around money and banking secrecy.
They want to stop the flow of money to terrorists who are targeting Israel. Senator Loomis wrote on X that cryptocurrency itself is not the enemy. It's the bad actors that use it for illegal activities that are the real issue. And speaking of money going to terrorists, we're going to hear from Eric Karen, an international security expert and author, about Iran's finances. Eric, thanks for coming on the show today. First, how does Iran get its money?
Hey, good morning, Kevin. Thanks for having me. Listen, Iran gets its money, illegal money, from multiple illegal ways, and that's from drug smuggling, counterfeits, as well as counterfeiting the U.S. currency, and human trafficking, and as well as illegal oil sales. The U.S. needs to tighten its sanctions on Iran. Any loopholes that are in place right now today, they need to be tightened. So there are multiple criminal ways that Iran gets its funding to fund its terror, specifically obtaining weapons from those monies, these illegal monies, as well as funding camps and other organizations, terror organization proxies, as you've heard, around the world. So the many various criminal ways, but mostly in the area of counterfeit. Cigarette smuggling is a big one as well. Alcohol smuggling is another way. Plus, like I said, the counterfeit of U.S. currency.
Thanks for bringing all those illegal practices to light. So how does Iran use this money to support terrorist organizations?
Well, like I mentioned, they are arming Hezbollah, Hamas, as well as about 19 militia groups in the Middle East that they control. Iran essentially is the engine of a train, and that train, its cabs are made up of various terror groups, and that train is traveling around the world. That terror train that Iran has loaded with international terror groups, and those terror groups are using the funds to carry out terrorist attacks and training. So it's about time that the U.S. government understands that we need to take the gloves off. And we say Iran is a terrorist state or a terror country. We need to start acting like they are and stop, being so, if you will, nice, if you will, with them. They're a terror country. They've declared war against America. We need to declare war against Iran.
So, Eric, explain this a little more. How much of Iran's support for these terror groups is done just out in the open, and how much is done behind the scenes through things like money laundering, etc.?
Yeah, some of it, you're right, some of it is behind the scenes, covertly, and some of it's overtly. And we as a nation need to understand law enforcement can't solve this problem on its own, Kevin. Diplomatically, we need the State Department to step it up and put political pressure on the neighboring countries to stop dealing with Iran. And if they don't, we pull back aid. So it's not just law enforcement help, additional help in law enforcement and putting pressure on law enforcement to help stem the tide of illegal money, but we need the diplomatic pressure to be put on countries in the region, such as the UAE, Jordan, Kuwait, and other Saudi Arabia, and other nations to say, stop dealing with a nation, a state sponsor of terror. Billions of dollars in trade is going to Iran. So sanctions and getting our diplomatic partners in the region to help us put pressure on.
Have you seen that diplomatic pressure happen? And if not, why not?
Yeah, it's a great question, Kevin. It hasn't happened over the last 20 some odd years. We can't get the United Arab Emirates, Oman, to stop trafficking in arms to Iran covertly, because it's about billions of dollars in trade. We know, we know that the UAE and Oman it continues to deal with Iran and conduct international trade, buy their oil and other goods. So State Department needs to pressure these countries harder, in that if you do not cooperate with the U.S. government, we will pull back aid, and either you're with us or against us. That's the bottom line. So State Department officials need to put more pressure on those neighboring countries to help prevent illegal money laundering and trade with Iran. It's a difficult job that the State Department has, but they need to step it up and put more political pressure on Iran. And if they don't, then we have to take measures to protect ourselves.
Well, thanks for laying out those regional connections and describing what needs to be done about this. Eric Caron, international security expert and author, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Kevin. Take care.
Another dangerous encounter over the South China Sea.
The U.S. military says a Chinese fighter jet came within 10 feet of a U.S. Air Force B-52 bomber Tuesday.
The U.S. Indo-Pacific Command said Thursday the Chinese pilot flew in an unsafe and unprofessional manner. It said the pilot demonstrated poor airmanship by using uncontrolled excessive speed, flying below, in front of, and within 10 feet of the B-52.
Indo-Pacific Command says it is concerned the Chinese pilot was unaware of how close he came to causing a collision. News of the latest Chinese intercept comes as President Biden is expected to speak with China's foreign minister when he visits the White House on Friday.
And speaking of China, former CCP Premier Li Keqiang has died. Chinese state media says he died of sudden heart failure shortly after midnight. He was 68 years old.
Li served as China's premier in Shanghai since 2013 when he took office with current regime leader Xi Jinping. He served as the second highest ranking official in China until early this year.
Li Keqiang was known as a political ally of Xi Jinping throughout his tenure.
Li was also the second-ranked member of the 7-man CCP Politburo Standing Committee. He was dropped from the position last year at a party congress. That was despite being 2 years below the informal retirement age of 70. Stay with us. Ford has released its third quarter earnings report following a possible agreement with the UAW union. We sit down with the host of NTD Business to find out the results.
And cross-sex surgical procedures, sexually explicit books in schools, and laws considered harmful to families. Dozens of parental rights groups rallied across 3 countries to, quote, stop the war on children.
Are diapers destroying your confidence? Men's Liberty can help. Our discreet external device is safe, sanitary, and keeps you dry 24 hours, day and night. Step into the spotlight and do more of what you love with Men's Liberty. It's been ordered over 5 million times by thousands of satisfied fans. Call now to get a free week supply with your first order. There's no obligation, just the opportunity to try the most revolutionary solution to incontinence ever made. Unlike diapers, Men's Liberty is a long-term answer to dealing with incontinence. Make the choice to finally move forward with your life by calling Men's Liberty today. We'll answer all of your questions about how our completely unique device works and how Medicare can cover it. Dealing with expensive, uncomfortable diapers is no way to live. Men's Liberty lets you get back out there with more freedom and confidence to be you. Ready to find out more about our offer to get a free week supply? Then don't wait. Call Men's Liberty today.
I use Book a Limo on all my trips. They have drivers everywhere.
I always feel safe when I travel with their chauffeurs, from hello to goodbye.
Checking rates, booking, and managing clients' reservations online is so easy.
The confirmations, trip reminders, and car status updates are great when I'm on the go.
I want my clients to have the best experience during their trip. That's why I've used Book a Limo for the past 30 years.
What's your destination? Book a limo, any car, anywhere.
Anyone who's ever sold a home can tell you it is really hard. That's why who you work with matters. Together with Homelight, we've helped thousands of people sell faster and for the best price.
After 15 years of smoking, Eva Marie quit. There's a new lung cancer screening that could save her life. You stopped smoking. Now start screening. Learn more at savedbythescan.org.
Hi everyone watching at home. We're here to remind you that if you or someone you know were injured in an accident that was not your fault, listen up. We have live agents available right now to answer your questions and tell you how much your case is potentially worth. Hi, I'm Gina Bellich, here with spokesman and TV personality Tom Mustin with us in the Help Center. So Tom, phones are really busy over there. Tell us what kind of calls you're seeing.
Well, Gina, first off, thank you for having me here in the call center with you. We always enjoy talking to the viewers and getting folks the compensation that they deserve. You know, we're seeing calls about all kinds of accidents, but the most common by far has been car accidents. So if you or someone you know were injured in an accident that was not your fault, give us a call right now. You'll speak with a live person. They'll answer any questions you have and tell you if you have a case and how much your case is potentially worth.
Thanks, Tom. All right, folks at home, you heard it. Take advantage of this opportunity and call now.
Good to have you back. Car maker Ford reported its third quarter earnings on Thursday, following a tentative deal reached with the United Auto Workers Union.
The earnings report shows mixed results. Joining us now to discuss this is NTD Business host Don Ma. Don, it's great to see you.
Yeah, good to see you as always, Kevin.
So how did Ford perform last quarter amid the UAW strikes?
Yeah, like you just said just now, it was actually a mixed bag, and investors seemed not to like what they saw actually in yesterday's report because Ford's earnings missed Wall Street expectations. But you know, despite falling short and despite the strike as well last quarter, the company's earnings actually rose compared to the previous quarter. The company had adjusted earnings of $2.2 billion for Q3. Ford's CFO said that the strike cost them $100 million last quarter.
So then with the strike now coming to an end, do you expect that to help Ford's earnings in the next quarter?
Well, it could help, but I'm not sure about that because the CFO also said the company likely lost the chance to produce 80,000 vehicles that it had planned to build and sell during the year, which will reduce full year earnings by about $1.3 billion. He also said that Ford expects the new contract with the UAW workers, it's going to add $850 to $900 in labor costs per vehicle going forward. And the concessions made by the company are significant here for the tentative deal. So even though the strike is likely over, the whole thing is still having an impact on Ford. But Evelyn, on a side note, another interesting thing that Ford said yesterday was that it's going to postpone about $12 billion in electric vehicle investment.
Okay, yeah, I want to get to that in a second, but that is definitely a ramification of the production lines just being at a standstill there with those strikes. But hopefully this company will keep producing and keep those employees at work. So tell me more about that reason why Ford is delaying its investment in the EVs.
Well, because the company is concerned about cooling EV demand from consumers, Ford said there's tremendous downward pressure on prices. And that means that people are not buying their EVs enough. Ford lost an estimated $36,000 per car on the electric vehicles it delivered to dealers in the third quarter. The company said customers were not willing to pay a premium for EVs. That's over traditional combustion engines and hybrid models.
Yeah, it seems like EV makers really have been burning through some cash for quite a while now.
Yeah, well, and Ford even says that they're not giving up on their EVs. It's just that they're going to readjust their pace a little bit in their production.
Right, Dawn, do you have anything else for us today?
Sure. We had the GDP numbers from yesterday of the U.S. economy. It went from 2.1% the previous quarter to 4.9% last quarter, doubling the rate of growth. It's the fastest growth the economy has shown in almost 2 years. Despite higher prices, increased interest rates, and forecasts of impending recession, consumers continue to ramp up spending, it seems like. And economists are concerned about a steady slowdown that may begin this quarter, extending into 2024. So we'll have to wait and see on that, but that's it from me.
That's one surefire principle. You can always bet on the American consumer.
Yeah, of course. Never bet against them.
Right. Well, thanks, Don Ma, host of NTD Business.
Thank you.
And mothers and fathers feeling threatened and speaking out. A worldwide rally advocating for protecting children was held last weekend.
NTD's Daniel Monahan spoke with Seek Smith, the founder of the Mom and Dad Army organizations.
The Stop the War on Children rallies were held in 3 countries, the US, Canada, and Germany, and 75 cities. They were organized by Mom Army, Our Duty, Gays Against Groomers, and dozens of other parental rights organizations. One rally was even held in front of the residence of California Governor Gavin Newsom.
Gavin Newsom declared war on every single family in the state of California.
Parents, what do you say? You can't take our rights away!
Mom Army founder Seek Smith discusses the organization.
Mom Army is a survivor-led organization. We work to protect children and their innocence, but our mission is mainly to protect them from exploitation, sexualization, trafficking, indoctrination. So all the things that are safeguards to protect children, we advocate for.
Smith has been fighting child sex trafficking for almost 15 years now. She says even in that fight, a lot of people don't want to believe what's actually going on, and that it's been an uphill battle to educate people and bring awareness.
Aside from trafficking and sexual abuse, the gender issue has become part of our mission as well, to protect children from being sterilized and mutilated by our medical industry.
They are mutilating minors at this facility.
Smith says following the money tells you who profits.
There's a lot of money to be made on traumatized children and broken families. And so when you look at the gender issue, there is an entire industry that profits off of that, right? You have hormone blockers, big pharma, you have pediatricians' office that are making money off of this too, because their set policy is if a child goes into the pediatrics office gender confused, they would automatically be referred to a gender clinic and fast track to the affirmative care model, right? Which is puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, and even double mastectomies for 15-year-olds.
Smith says people are afraid to speak up. The Mom Army founder says her organization gets called a hate group or homophobic.
We just know how hard it is for people to speak up, even on social media, let alone show up at a rally where their photo could be taken, their identity, and get doxxed and maybe lose their job or somebody reports them to their company. So people need to understand the chilling effect that is happening, that is silencing people like us.
Smith is calling out institutions like schools and medical associations for their stance on kids.
We're a survivor-led organization, so we see what's happening as targeting of children to confuse them and make them vulnerable, easy targets for predators by exposing them to material and information that confuses them and can take away the safeguards that we have in place as a society when you're talking about pornography in school books and libraries and sex education for 5-year-olds. I mean, things like that are just 5-10 years ago, we would be up in arms about something like this. But people are just kind of shrugging their shoulder going, it's not that bad.
The Mom Army founder is worried how history will judge those who remained silent.
I'm very concerned of the carnage that we are going to encounter in the next decade of children who have been horrifically taken advantage of. And then they're going to ask some hard questions. They're going to ask, where were all the adults? And so many people are sitting on the sidelines pretending like this isn't happening or just not, it's not happening to my family, so why should I care?
Smith is calling on people to get educated, informed, and involved at any level to protect the innocence of children. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
Coming up, students across campuses are afraid to voice their opinions. We sit down with an expert to talk about the importance of free speech.
My Towels solved a problem that we've all had with towels. You go into the stores and they feel lotiony and soft, but then you get them home and they wind dry you. That's why I made My Towels. They actually work, they're soft, and they absorb. And now I'm excited to announce 2 brand new lines of My Towels. What makes them the best towels ever is they're now made with 100% long staple Shapir cotton. This is a combed ring spun cotton that makes My Towels even softer and more absorbent than ever. And now you get a 6-piece set for an amazing introductory sale price as low as $29.98. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to get My Towels for only $29.98. Or you can get my designer premium line for just $20 more. Either way, you save 50% now on all My Towels. They actually work. What a concept. This offer won't last long, so please order now.
MyPillow.com.
I love you.
I went to Dr. Benatti and he went ahead and looked at my pictures. He told me, you have pain here, you have pain here. And I was like, yeah, absolutely. I'd been to others, but he was a doctor that didn't want to fillet my back open like a fish and do like open spine surgery because everybody else wanted to do that and I was not having it. The anesthesiologist who was working with me, I was like having a conversation with this guy. And then I was watching on the monitor as Dr. Benatti is fixing my back. I really felt like I was in good hands.
Benatti succeeds where others fail.
We're here on the global front line of the battle between communism and freedom.
The Epoch Times fights back against misinformation and big tech censorship by being independent and unbound to advertisers. And to help bolster our ongoing mission of bringing you information that legacy media and big tech don't want you to hear, we've established a car donation program called Cars for Compassion. Through this program, you can help us to continue to bring you independent and daringly truthful journalism and significantly impact somebody's life that needs a vehicle. Through Cars for Compassion, any idle vehicle that's just collecting dust in your driveway can be donated to us, and we'll provide your car to someone who needs transportation but is struggling to afford it. All you have to do is go to carsforcompassion.org Let us know about your car, we'll schedule a pickup time, and we'll email you a tax-deductible receipt right after we sell your car. All you have to do is click the link down below, www.carsforcompassion.org. That's www.carsforcompassion.org.
It's good to have you back with us. The right to free speech is being challenged on some college campuses, with some students afraid to voice their opinions.
I spoke to the executive director of Speech First to talk about the importance of free speech and the impact it has on intellectual development. Joining me now is Charisse Trump. She is the executive director of Speech First. Good morning, Charisse. Now, to start, would you please tell me what your mission is with Speech First? What do you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So we are a nonprofit organization that defends students' free speech rights on college campuses. So we litigate, which means sue universities that violate those students' free speech rights, make sure students are educated about what their legal rights are on campus, and we also advocate for them, with educating state lawmakers, letting everyone around the country know what's actually happening on the ground on campuses.
So does it go to court? Like, what do judges look at in that case, and what are the outcomes like in those litigations?
Our argument to the courts is that the existence of these policies actually chills student speech, because when they know their peers and faculty can report on them if they make an offensive opinion or speak up, which is, by the way, all the forms of speech I've listed off are constitutionally protected forms of speech. So when students come to us, their concern is that they can't actually express their views in the classroom. They can't even tweet their views without getting reamed. Viewpoint diversity is very important to a college education, being able to hear other views and actually getting to debate one another. But even just expressing your ideas is fundamental to intellectual development.
So now at the same time, what we wanted to touch on today is that you said you see how universities nowadays are churning out future activists. Now, obviously activists, outspoken, and are also a big part of that freedom of expression. So where do you see the problem here?
Now we're seeing taxpayer dollars, when you think about public schools, taxpayer dollars being spent on courses that actually put students in a position where they can go ahead and earn credit for participating in what they call social justice activism. And so that could be anything from abolish the police movement to Black Lives Matter to marching in parades and going out and, look, we all want to encourage student activism. But should taxpayers be really responsible at the end of the day to fund the activism, especially when it's completely one-sided and when it's pushing a political agenda that the administrators and the faculty on campuses are very much a part of and they want to pursue? Students, when they come from K through 12, they don't have a lot of exposure to things like, the Constitution, which should be fundamental in their K through 12 learning through civics, but they don't get that anymore. They don't get those foundational principles such as free speech and viewpoint diversity by the time they get to college. So they're very easy to manipulate by the time they get to college because they don't know what their rights are and they don't have that agency over them. So a lot of universities try to take advantage of that and essentially kind of coerce them into many of these various political movements.
I want to touch on one point that you just mentioned, which is that many people are coerced into supporting things that they don't actually want to support. So can you give me some more examples on what points to that?
Yeah, we've seen a number of situations where this has happened. It was down in California, Pomona College. The Student Government Association, with support of their faculty advisors, attempted to require all clubs, in order to receive club status, to participate in the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement against Israel, which would have been not only a violation of their views and discrimination based on their viewpoints, but also severely anti-Semitic and anti-Israel for any of the Jewish organizations or Jewish clubs that they would have had to participate in that in order to receive club funding. We saw something very similar at Rutgers University in their law school not too long ago, where they actually tried to require students to, in order to receive club funding, to actually hold events every semester on critical race theory. So again, this is something that we're seeing across the board. Those bias response teams that I mentioned to you, what they're doing there is they're giving the students a list essentially of words and phrases and ideas that are not allowed to be expressed, knowing that they can be reported. That is compelled speech. Forcing someone to espouse an idea that they don't believe in is very much protected under the First Amendment as just being able to speak your mind. So it is a violation of the First Amendment rights to compel student speech in that way.
Well, thank you so much for laying out some of the issues that you have been seeing. Charisse Trump, I really appreciate your time today.
Absolutely, having me.
Really is a lot of good points presented there, and it's not just college campuses. Like, remember when that 12-year-old boy wore the shirt, there are only two genders, and then he got punished for it?
Yeah, there's different examples for that. I'm taking a look at the time right here, and we're starting the second part of the broadcast now. The suspect in the Maine shootings still at large. Police and FBI agents surrounded a home in Bowdoin last night, demanding surrender. The latest on the hunt for fugitive Robert Card.
The U.S. launching precision airstrikes in Syria this morning. That's in response to a rise in terrorist attacks on U.S. forces since the war in Israel began.
Should Israel focus on humanitarian aid or focus on eliminating Hamas? We're bring on an expert to weigh in on the issue.
Democrat Dean Phillips launches a 2024 bid for president. How will his candidacy affect the race?
And we take a look at an entrepreneur from England who transformed an old Boeing 737 with some extraordinary results.
Good morning, and to all of you just joining us, welcome to NTD. I'm Kevin Hogan.
Good morning from me as well. I'm Evelyn Lee. Today is Friday, October 27th, and let's get into our top stories. The manhunt to find 40-year-old Robert Card continues. Card is accused of killing at least 18 people and injuring several others in a shooting in Maine Wednesday night. He's now facing an arrest warrant for 8 counts of murder.
Police say the counts will probably go up to a total of 18 after the remaining victims are identified.
The FBI and state police carried out a search warrant at Card's last known address in Bowdoin last night. Officials say the 40-year-old fugitive is a U.S. Army reservist and a skilled outdoors man with a history of mental health issues. He's considered armed and dangerous.
Authorities are asking residents to shelter in place and to report any suspicious activity to police.
The U.S. military carried out airstrikes in Syria near the border of Iraq today.
The Pentagon says the targets were being used by Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps and affiliated terrorist groups.
President Biden ordered the airstrikes. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin stated, Iranian-backed attacks against U.S. forces are unacceptable and must stop.
A defense official says 2 F-16 fighter jets using precision munitions carried out the attack and that weapons and ammunition facilities were taken out.
A statement from the Pentagon said precision self-defense strikes are a response to recent attacks that spiked on October 17th. The U.S. is bolstering its presence in the Middle East as attacks on U.S. and coalition forces rise. The Pentagon says it's deploying roughly 900 American troops to protect U.S. forces and interests overseas.
The news coincides with the shipment of a terminal high-altitude area defense system and more Patriot missile batteries to the region.
The Pentagon says U.S. forces in Iraq and Syria were attacked 3 times yesterday. That brings the total within the last week up to 16 and 19 since the war in Israel began. 21 U.S. personnel reportedly sustained minor injuries.
Iran's foreign minister warned the UN yesterday if Israel does not stop its offensive, the U.S. will, in his words, not be spared from this fire.
And White House spokesperson John Kirby defended the U.S. stance on death tolls coming out of Gaza.
Kirby was asked why the State Department changed its approach when reporting numbers from the Gaza and Palestinian Ministry of Health. Watch.
We all obviously grieve with the families and loved ones who are affected by that, but the numbers are not reliable. They're just not reliable. And I don't need to tell you how to do your jobs, but if you're going to report casualty figures out of Gaza, I would frankly recommend you don't choose numbers put out by an organization that's run by a terrorist organization. What's harsh is the way Hamas is using people as human shields. What's harsh is taking a couple of hundred hostages and leaving families in, anxious, waiting and worrying to figure out where their loved ones are. What's harsh is dropping in on a music festival and slaughtering a bunch of young people just trying to enjoy an afternoon. I could go on and on. That's what's harsh.
On on that topic, 50 Christian and Jewish leaders have signed a letter that says Israel must do all that is needed to destroy Hamas. So we're bringing in Dr. Susan Michael, who organized and signed the letter, to hear more about her moral reasoning on that. She's also the USA Director of the International Christian Embassy, Jerusalem. It's really good to see you. Now, first, I would like to hear what prompted you to organize this.
Well, Evelyn, we see that any time that there is a military operation in Gaza, we go through this, several times in history, and Israel is blamed for this disproportionate response, or the world tries to pressure them not to defend themselves, not to defend their citizens. And yet we in the United States would do exactly what Israel's doing now. And so we wanted to end the double standard and to call for the United Nations, for the White House, to continue to actually reflect some moral clarity and to call terrorism for what it is, condemn this terrorist attack that was on Israel's southern border, and defend Israel's right to defend itself.
And I think most agree that, Israel has a right to defend itself. The question seems now to be more to which degree. So you just spoke about the disproportionate response that Israel is being blamed with. So what do you think? Have they done too much harm? Why or why not?
Look, we mourn any harm, and we mourn any loss of life. The issue here is that Gaza is a very densely populated area. Gaza City is very densely populated, and Hamas is using human beings as shields. So they have set up arms depot in hospitals, in mosques. They set up missile launchers next to schools. They are telling the people of Gaza not to go to the south of Gaza where they will be safe, as Israel's encouraging them to do. And they're using them as human shields. So Hamas is the one to blame for any loss of life here and damage to a mosque or even a hospital. Israel's not going to bomb a hospital, but there sometimes weapons depots blow up when there's an explosion nearby. And these things we all mourn any loss of life to innocent civilians. But how innocent are they? Are they there because they actually are part of the Hamas infrastructure? That's a whole nother question.
And one thing that is being floated around a lot is the term collective punishment. On that note, also remembering what you just said today, what is your stance on that?
On collective punishment? I think Israel is after one thing, and that is the Hamas militia. They are a terrorist organization. They are armed to the teeth. They are very, very wealthy. They have built tunnels all underneath Gaza. That's who Israel is after. They are in no way trying to enforce some kind of collective punishment of all the people of Gaza. They have Arabic-speaking Israelis on the phone calling every phone in Gaza, telling them, flee to the south where you will be safe, because we must move in to the north, which is where Gaza City is. They are dropping leaflets telling the people, flee to the south, get out. And Hamas is at gunpoint telling them they cannot leave. So who's to blame here?
I think that's some interesting context that you provide there. So lastly, before we go, why do you think that the elimination of Hamas is so important, that basically despite all the costs this should be carried out?
Well, in 2005, Israel moved out of Gaza and the Palestinian Authority government was set up there. And 2 years later, Hamas came in with a bloody coup and took over the government. Hamas, for the last, 15 years or more, has done nothing but use their position as the government over Gaza to build tunnels, to amass weapons like you wouldn't believe. They've already launched close to 10,000 missiles towards Israel and Israel civilians just since October the 7th. So they are armed, and they are a very, very dangerous terrorist organization. They must be eliminated, just like America had to go into Europe and eliminate the Nazis. Just like we went after Al-Qaeda and bin Laden after 9/11, Israel must get rid of this terrorist organization that has done nothing but terrorize Israelis since 2007. Just today, there was a barrage of missiles all across the middle of Israel, not the south, Tel Aviv and central Israel. People are in their bomb shelters right now because of this terrorist organization. They will not stop. They will only use a ceasefire to rearm. Israel must eliminate them.
Thank you so much, Susan Michael, for sharing your stance on this. I appreciate your time this morning.
Thank you.
Right, and let's keep in mind that Israelis were giving the Palestinians the forewarning and saying to evacuate that part of Gaza before the bombings, whereas the terrorists did not give any warning to those people at the Supernova Festival before they massacred them.
Right. That's very interesting. And somebody had floated the example of to think about how, let's say, what if Israel was doing the same thing, basically using women, children as human shields? How would the Hamas's reaction be to that? How would that be handled? And I think it's pretty clear. So it's just, the nature of a terrorist organization ruling that area of
right.
Gaza.
And another example of that is that Israel uses missiles to deflect the rockets coming in to destroy civilians, whereas Hamas, they use missiles directly to kill civilians. And sometimes it's their own people.
That's also,
So stick around. Federal prosecutors withdraw another subpoena and an inquiry into former President Trump's fundraising after the 2020 election.
President Biden has new competition in his bid for re-election. Minnesota Congressman Dean Phillips is throwing his hat into the ring.
What's complicating the nursing shortage? No more room at nursing schools. The aspiring professionals are being turned away due to a staffing shortage. We speak to a former nurse and representative about this and what's causing nurse dissatisfaction.
And when we think of cozy Airbnbs, airplanes don't usually come to mind, but a man from England thinks differently. We take a look at the extraordinary transformation after the break.
Anyone who's ever sold a home will tell you it's really hard. And it's one of the biggest financial decisions you'll ever make. That's why who you work with matters. Together with HomeLight, we take care of every detail.
It's all good, baby.
Is it really all good?
If you love me enough to routinely test your handyman skills, not to mention the strength of your marriage, then of course you'll visit nhtsa.gov/therightseat to make sure I'm in the right car seat.
As we naturally age, many people are getting zero amount of this incredible and unique substance. That's when we start seeing an impact in our joints, skin, nails, and even our digestion.
People ask me, Dr. X, what is the #1 supplement I should be taking? My answer is multi-collagen protein.
People's reactions to me, people were like, what are you doing? What is going on? You look amazing. You have a glow about you.
What makes Ancient Nutrition Multi-Collagen stand out from other brands? 10 types of collagen. It's grass-fed, pasture-raised with vitamin C and probiotics. It's proven to reduce exercise-induced joint discomfort as early as day 1 and reduce joint discomfort rapidly, continuously, and persistently. It improves the appearance of crow's feet after 4 weeks and improves skin tone after 8 weeks. And it promotes hair thickness, growth, and a reduction in hair breakage.
It has transformed everything from my hair. Like, my hair was starting to kind of just, come out, and I don't have that anymore. My skin feels amazing.
Call the number on your screen and find out how to get a free bottle when you order, plus free shipping and our 30-day money-back guarantee. And as a bonus, we will include Dr. Josh Axe and Jordan Rubin's revolutionary book, Multi-Collagen Makeover, free with your order, plus free shipping and free returns.
I have implicit trust in Dr. Axe because the plan worked. I'm living proof of it.
This is the collagen protein that is backed by clinical studies. It's what my family uses, it's what I use, and I know you're gonna benefit in a big way as well.
Love the results or get your money back. This special TV offer is not available in stores. Call the number on your screen or go online now.
My mother was always very familiar with her neighborhood, but one day she stopped at the stop sign for much longer than usual. And she didn't know whether she should go forward or turn, and she wasn't even really sure where she was at. It was very unsettling for her.
I felt so much better after my son told me, "Mom, I don't want you to worry or be afraid. I'll be there for you and we'll figure it out."
Thanks for staying with us. House Republican George Santos is set to appear in court for arraignment today. The embattled congressman was hit with additional charges earlier this month and is now facing 23 criminal counts.
Charges in the original indictment include wire fraud, theft of public funds, and money laundering. Santos is accused of stealing identities and money from campaign donors.
Several House Republicans are forcing a vote to decide if he should be expelled from Congress.
A resolution was offered on the House floor yesterday by New York Representative Anthony Despacito. A two-thirds majority vote would be needed to expel Santos.
The House must vote on the resolution within 2 legislative days. Santos posted on X shortly after the resolution was introduced, saying he's not resigning and is entitled to due process.
Newly elected House Speaker Mike Johnson did not object to the resolution to expel Santos.
In more politics, a subpoena seeking information from former President Donald Trump's 2020 campaign has been withdrawn.
This is the second withdrawn subpoena related to Special Counsel Jack Smith's investigation into Trump's fundraising practices after the 2020 election.
Earlier this month, Smith reportedly withdrew a subpoena seeking records from Save America, a Trump-controlled political action committee.
The 2020 campaign's fundraising efforts also came under scrutiny from the House Select Committee investigating the January 6 Capitol breach. At a June 2022 hearing, the panel tried to make the case that the Trump campaign raised funds by falsely claiming the election was stolen.
Minnesota Congressman Dean Phillips announced he's challenging President Biden in the Democratic primary.
Earlier this year, he said he would not run against Biden, but would encourage others in their efforts.
Phillips told CBS News that he would not sit still when numbers are saying there will be an emergency next November. He also said that Biden has done a great job for the country, but the election is about the future.
Phillips has argued that Biden isn't a strong candidate because of his age and low approval rating.
This campaign launch comes as Democrats seek to unify around the president and lay out the administration's accomplishments to voters.
Tens of thousands of aspiring nurses are being turned away due to staffing shortages. It's another challenge running alongside the nursing shortage gripping the nation. To get some insight into this, I spoke with former nurse and former Congresswoman Anne Marie Buerkle. Check it out. Anne Marie Buerkle, thank you so much for your time today. What are some of the challenges that could stem from these nursing schools turning away these applications due to the nursing shortage?
Well, thanks very much for having me, Kevin. I'm glad to be here as a former nurse, and I have a daughter who's a nurse as well. I think that the nursing shortage is a symptom of a much larger problem. But, you know, the irony here is the nursing shortage. The hospitals fired so many, thousands and thousands of nurses because they were not vaccinated and they refused to get the vaccine. My own daughter was a nurse in New York City for 2 years and worked all through the COVID crisis. And then they required the vaccine and she said, I don't need it. I've either had COVID or I'm immune to it. So she's now in Florida. And I think, so that issue, along with the fact that they never addressed the burnout and how these nurses worked during COVID, I think that has contributed to the problem significantly.
Long hours, a lot of stress, and they even had their signs saying from hero to zero. So I can understand that they're dealing with a lot. Now, how do we break out of this cycle? If there's less nurses because the applications aren't going through because of a nursing shortage, won't that just lead to a bigger shortage? And what's to do here?
Well, I think that you cannot solve this nursing shortage problem in a vacuum. It's not the only problem in the healthcare system. You really do have to look at the whole healthcare system and the problems that are really the American people are facing today. And it's on their minds. The polls show how they're concerned about the inflation involved in healthcare. And so I'm imploring my Republican colleagues in the House and in the Senate to take up these healthcare issues, And one of the biggest issues that's driving up the cost of healthcare and affects this whole nursing issue is the mergers and acquisitions that are occurring within hospital systems. So I trained in a single hospital, it was a community hospital, about 300 or 400 beds. Now that's merged into a healthcare system of over 80 hospitals. And so there's a much less personal relationship, not only with the nurses, but with the community. And also it gives them a much bigger, when they're negotiating health rates with the insurance plans, gives them much more leverage, and they drive up the cost of the health costs within the healthcare plan. So big problem that Congress has got to address, and that gets back to nurses, their satisfaction within the hospitals.
Yes, and this is a big problem. I mean, that's 78,000 qualified applications turned away just last year. So is there a way to incentivize more people to become nurses?
Well, I think it's the elephant in the room are the salaries for nurses. If you look at some of these not-for-profit hospitals who, quite frankly, they don't have to pay taxes, look what their CEOs and their officers are making versus what nurses are making. And so that's a very important piece of this. If there isn't job satisfaction and you're not getting a very good wage, you're not going to be able to recruit nurses into the healthcare profession.
And just in one sentence here, Anne-Marie, what's your biggest takeaway from this whole thing?
My biggest takeaway is that whether it's the Republicans or the Democrats, they have to address these healthcare issues because it's on the minds of the American people. The healthcare system is broken, and we need to address the rising costs and the affordability of healthcare for the American people.
Well, Anne-Marie Burkle, former U.S. Representative, thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Kevin. Thanks for having me.
Okay, and here's a pretty cool story to end the show today. Have you ever seen those really unique Airbnb listings? Like they pop up in the middle of nowhere, in the desert, or just somewhere unexpected? I think this one you'll see now is really up there.
Yeah, indeed. And when we think of airplanes, a cozy Airbnb doesn't immediately come to mind. But one entrepreneur from England decided to flip an old Boeing 737 into a quirky vacation rental with some very interesting results. Let's take a look.
Stephen Northam is a self-professed serial entrepreneur from England. Having been semi-retired, he was looking for a venture that would reignite his passion.
I'd sold quite a large company and not sort of retired, but sort of stepped back from business. And I was looking for some fun, interesting projects, things to do next. Obviously, I teach part-time. There's a fun sort of job. And thought, let's have a look on eBay, see if there's anything interesting popping up. And then this half plane popped up on eBay, and I thought, oh, that's quirky, different. So I thought, I'll grab that.
Initially, he just thought of the project as something fun for his daughters to play in. But it later occurred to him that it could be turned into something that makes money.
Plane was at a local college about an hour away. So Chichester College is where it originally was used for training, sort of air stewardesses, I suppose. It was on eBay. It cost £5,000, which I thought was a bargain, really, for half a Boeing 737. It cost me £3,000 to move it, because obviously moving a plane, half a plane, not an easy task. Took several months to organise it.
Stephen spent a further 3 months renovating over the summer last year, working every day. After some initial delays with getting set up, the project came along nicely.
Biggest challenge for the plane initially was trying to move it. Logistics-wise, it's quite a nightmare to try and move this half a plane, so that was a struggle. And then fitting it out, quite difficult because there's no straight edges. It's a round tube. Everything's got to be cut bespoke. So yeah, that was quite a challenge to actually fit it out and convert it, which is why it's taken a while. And also planning permission to open it on the land. I didn't have planning, but that all went through fairly recently, and the local council loved it.
Stephen, who's also a part-time teacher, says passion is what drives him.
I like business, I like doing things, but I do find I lose the interest as soon as it works. I get bored. I want to do the next project.
Which led Stephen to consider some more innovative and unusual future endeavors.
Train carriages, double-decker bus, bought an armoured truck, so like an armoured camper van, sort of a military-style Airbnb. So tanks on the list as well. So just really converted a selection of really quirky Airbnb spaces. So.
Stephen also has some advice for anyone starting out as an entrepreneur.
Best advice business-wise is pick something you're really passionate about and love doing, even if you weren't paid to do it, you just enjoy doing it, and turn that into a business.
Having some skills is also important, but ultimately, Stephen says, do it for the love of it.
The amount of things you can find on eBay, huh?
Oh,
That's
wow.
certainly creative.
Yeah.
I like that.
And imagine the marketing for this. This is no plain getaway.
I think you should be the copywriter.
I got another one.
Oh,
Book
please.
this and take off your stress.
See, you can, like, here's us advocating for this guy as a marketing copywriter. All right, no, I'm just kidding. We need to have him right here where he is. All right, we have to wrap up their show now before I do more damage. We'll keep you updated with the latest information. Stay tuned for our News Today broadcast at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Thanks for watching. I'm Evelyn Lee.
And I'm Kevin Hogan.
Thanks for watching us on YouTube. Did you know YouTube only keeps selective videos on its platform? So if you want to make sure you get the full picture, just subscribe to our newsletter. Go to newsletter.ntd.com and sign up. It's free.